Hey guys, it's Emrecan, and in this video I'm gonna be showing you what are the exception handlings in Java, and I'll be explaining you as many as subjects in this video to you because I learned something and I just made research, and I'm just converting those research to a video. So I don't want to hold you anymore, and let's go back to the screen. As you can see in the right of my screen, the roadmap's still here. We already know the basic syntax, data types and variables, the conditionals, loops, functions, and right now the next step is exception handling. In this video you are going to learn anything, not actually anything, but 99% of the exception handling you're going to learn in this video. So right now I took some notes in my another screen and I'll be checking that screen in this video, okay? Just let you know beforehand. So first of all, let's start from the what is exception handling. So an exception is an event that disrupts the normal flow of the program. We should handle the exceptions, and we should tell the developers or the one who maintain the system or who manage the system, the people. We should tell the people, okay, that there is an exception, or there is an error, So actually people are confusing about the errors versus exceptions. So let me tell you about the difference between errors and exceptions. Errors are impossible to recover. You cannot recover the errors, but the exceptions you can recover. You can just handle the exception and see what's going on. Also, errors are checked, but the exceptions are checked and unchecked. They both. You don't have to worry about what's checked or unchecked. I'm gonna tell you in the next minutes. Errors happened only in the runtime when the application is running, but the exceptions are also in runtime and the compile time. When we're clicking the start button, it's compiled the program and then it runs. Exceptions are handling in that time in the compile time also. Also, errors caused by the environment which application is on running, but the exceptions are only caused by application, okay? Errors about the environment, exceptions are about the application. So let me tell you an image that I take from Geeks for Geeks, and it's actually showing us the exceptions hierarchy. And as you know, when there is an exception in the application, it creates the object of that exception. The Java is creating the object of that exception, and it gives the object the throwable ability, and then it decides, is that an error or is that an exception? If it's an exception, it could be checked exceptions, example input output or compile time exception, or it can be unchecked exceptions or runtime or null pointer exceptions. If it's an error, as I mentioned earlier, it should be about environment like virtual machine or assertion error, etc. So that was the exception hierarchy, but the next thing that I actually want to tell you about the checked and unchecked exceptions. I still have another image about this that I took it from Edureka, the YouTube channel Edureka. You can subscribe that channel in the description below. I already put their video link out there. And the checked and unchecked exceptions, there are some difference between them. The checked exception and the exception that is checked by the compiler at compilation time, but the unchecked exceptions, they occurs at the time of execution. Also, checked exception, these exceptions cannot simply be ignored. You gotta handle these exceptions. But unchecked exceptions, these are also called as runtime exception. It's the exceptions that are not a block for running the program. You gotta handle these exceptions also. Of course, you gotta handle these exceptions, but it's not like a block for the running the program because the runtime exceptions are ignored at the time of compilation. Then the next step to learn is the exception example. So let me give you an exception example. So I'm gonna create a new Java class and I'm gonna tell this the exception. As you can see, let's just create the static void main. So how do you write an exception? First, let's create a problem. The problem is going to be divide by 0 problem, okay? Int A is gonna be 10, int B is gonna be 0. Then in the try catch block, I'm gonna create a try catch block. I'm gonna tell that int C is going to be A divided by B. Not gonna tell anything. Just gonna add the catch block. This is an arithmetic exception, by the way. Let me see the exception here. Let's go. Here you go. There is an arithmetic exception. Divide by 0. If you want to make sure that if it's really writing the correct thing here, let's write this and error, the arithmetic exception by divide by 0. That's a really cool fact, and that's how you handle the exceptions. So that's the basic try catch block, and that's the basic predefined, the built-in exceptions usage. So right now I'll be showing you the type of exceptions, okay? Then we are gonna go over a little bit more deep on the exception handling. So there's another image that I take it from Geeks for Geeks. I also add that link in the documents, okay? So there are two types of exceptions in the Java. One of them is user-defined exceptions. The other one is the built-in exceptions. The built-in exceptions, as I told you before, that they also split by two, checked and unchecked exceptions. You can see the arithmetic exception, class, blah blah, and you can check the examples of those, but you're gonna learn them by practicing them. We already created an example for the built-in exceptions, but we are gonna create one more example for the user-defined exceptions. The user-defined exceptions are the one that created by the users. So how will you create a user-defined exception, right? So we gotta create a class first. So let's say something happens here, and in this method, and occurred an error, which is my beautiful exception, right? You gotta say throw new my beautiful exception like this. I'm going to show you how to use the throw keyword, but right now you're throwing an exception and it should have a class which is extends by exception class. You gotta create a class here with the same name, but it's gotta be extended from the exceptions, and in that class the constructor should be right what the parameter it took. But right now there is an error, as you can see. My beautiful exception class, it occurs an error, should be declared in a file name my beautiful exception Java. So let's create a Java class in that name, and I'll be taking this thing from here. Let me just delete that, and let's add this here exceptions. The constructor here, you don't have to worry about like what's the constructor, what did you write there, blah blah. I'll be telling you everything about this. So there's a one related problem here. As you can see, it redirects me to my main class, which is exceptions. If I write here, there is a specific problem. So I just choose the different thing. We gotta use the exception class here, and so I forgot to put it here, the throws keyword, which is my beautiful exception. It's gonna throw it my beautiful exception from the my beautiful exception class, and that one also extends the exception class. The exception class is using for the creating the exception, user-defined exception. So in the exceptions class, my lesson class actually, we already throw an error. So let's see how it works. As you can see, it says exception in thread. As you can see, there is a specific problem. It says there is a problem, and I'm throwing that to you. That's how you define a new exception class. So let's go to the next step. It was actually simple, but you can make it a different examples for those. For example, if you are checking the username, and if it doesn't have the pattern that you want from the users for the database or some other thing, you can just throw a wrong username exception, false pattern exception or something. You can just create dozens of exception type, and that's actually for more readability. It's easier, it's good, it's better, and we should write more readable code every time, and more maintainable. It should be a maintainable, right? So I already told you the type of exceptions and the exception methods. So there are 4 pieces of exception methods. Let me tell you what are those. I took the image from the Edureka YouTube channel. Let me tell you again. And there are 3 types of exception methods: final, finally, and finalize. So the final is a keyword. It applies to classes, which is a restriction, methods, and variable. You can apply this final keyword to the classes, methods, and variables. And this is a restriction for the method. And it means final class cannot be inherited, methods cannot be overridden, and the variable value cannot be changed. I can show you an example from real life. Let me just create a string name, and let's make that name Emrecan. As you can see, this is actually an unreachable statement because of the throw new keyword, but down this one, as you can see, the string name, if I click the string thing, you can see the final keyword here. It means it's not going to be changed. As you know, as I mentioned earlier videos, strings are immutable, they cannot be changed. So the second one is finally, keyword. Finally is a block and used to place an important code. It will be executed whether the exception is handled or not. Let me create a try catch block here. I'm gonna write here problem, let's say 10, and in the another integer is going to be 0, and the last one is going to be a divided by b. Put a comma. So if I put here the final keyword and final block, the final block, I gotta make sure that it gives me a sum that's finally output. As you can see, the exception is handled right here. Exception in thread on the main method divide by 0 is already handled, and which is arithmetic exception. And then even the exception handled, the final block is running. But if I add here catch that arithmetic exception, let me put this here, let's write that exception here. If I do that, as you can see, first try block run, then the try block there was an error and it goes to the catch block. The catch block run, then the program doesn't stop and it goes to the final block. Finally, you can take that exception and put the database. You can log the exception and put somewhere in your files. You can do anything important code, okay? Because you gotta know where did you get the exception, you know, which line of code, which pile of your code base. And the last is the finalize keyword. So the finalize is a method and used to perform cleanup processing just before the object is garbage collected. Okay, so but finalize is right now deprecated and we don't use the finalize method anymore because of the last version of the garbage collectors are using the finalize thing in the back because I made some research. So this was the last thing that I can show you in the exception handling. You can check everything in the description below, every document that I take information from, and I hope you like this video. I'm gonna show you in the next video the working with files and APIs and then maybe packages, because I gotta make sure that I know everything before going into the data structures, OOP and interfaces or classes, you know, like I gotta make sure everything is done, the fundamentals. So again, I hope you liked the video. If you have some question in your mind, you can just ask me in the comments. Then let's see you on the next video. See you.